The Secret Service has one critical mission: protect the president at all costs. But a new book says there have been no shortage of close calls, mistakes, and even scandals over the last few decades. Carol Leonnig is a Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter at The Washington Post, the author of the best-selling book Zero Fail: The Rise and Fall of the Secret Service. I spoke with her earlier about the realities of today's Secret Service. Take a listen. And joining me now is Carol Leonnig, the author of Zero Fail: The Rise and Fall of the Secret Service. Carol, thank you so much for being with me. It's an honor to have you here.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
So, if any government entity is not to be political, should be apolitical, it's the Secret Service. And reading every word of the 500 pages that you wrote, it is so gripping. It also became clear that certainly during the last administration, things got very political among the Secret Service. Number one, talk about that. Number two, is that the first time in our history that that's happened?
It's not the first time it's ever happened, but it did cross a line that a lot of alumni, the long-serving Secret Service agents and supervisors, found shocking. When Donald Trump was president, he wasn't looking at many of the agencies under his purview for their ability to improve, their ability to have a strategic mission that might be redrawn, their long-term health, the morale of their employees. He looked mostly at agencies as tools for him to deploy for his own political benefit. Now, all presidents use the executive for their political benefit, but this was pretty striking. And he deployed the Secret Service to, among other things, forcibly remove protesters of George Floyd's killing from the area outside the White House so he could stage sort of a law and order moment, a stride across this empty square and look tough. He deployed the Secret Service to essentially help him boost and burnish his image for re-election, sending them out into cities and states where COVID was spiking in public to help stage these events, which honestly he could have done by Zoom or by television broadcast, as he is nationally televised most of the time that he was speaking. And then finally, the Secret Service, the head of the president's detail, was transferred temporarily to be the Deputy Chief of Staff in the White House, a political role that the Secret Service usually considers a big no-no. That Deputy White House Chief of Staff was helping the president get reelected, help him stage his rallies, help him burnish his political image, and has now, since Donald Trump's loss of the election and loss of reelection, he is now the Assistant Director of the Secret Service for training.
And it's important to note, I think, by the way, it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican watching this. This book is really told from the perspective and the work of the Secret Service. So you walk through all the presidents, Democratic and Republican. Our first story just happened to be about Trump. But let me ask you this, and given what you just said, obviously a lot of presidents, John Kennedy, you go back to the Kennedy assassination, but Kennedy liked to mingle with the crowds. They all want to mingle with the crowds and talk to them. Reagan would like to do a lot of that. How does Secret Service handle the pressures being put on them in terms of what a president wants them to do or orders them to do, and their own call about saying that's just not anything we should be doing, or we can't do that for safety purposes, for example?
I'm so glad you asked this question because it is a constant battle and pressure point for the Secret Service. Politicians want to be out among the people. John F. Kennedy literally made himself more vulnerable to assassination by insisting that his agents stay away from the back of his limousine. That's the place where you saw, certainly in all the still images and in the Zapruder film, Clint Hill, an agent heroically clambering onto the back of the limo, trying to get to the president in time to shield him from the gunfire that was coming at him from a high-rise building. If they had been closer, it's conceivable that Clint Hill could have accomplished what he was seeking to do, which was to give his life for the president. The agents really find it difficult to try to put their foot down with the president. It's an awkward situation. You are both protecting the man, but also working for the man. But some presidents have really engendered incredibly warm feelings in the Secret Service because they just comply. George Herbert Walker Bush, for example, a beloved president in the eyes of the Secret Service, once said to, a group of people, VIPs visiting, "I'm sorry, I'll have to leave. The Secret Service is calling and I do what they say." That is sort of their dream. But for example, Bill Clinton, he also wanted to keep the Secret Service further away from him than arm's length. He was sort of the first president really making his image through television, a young, vibrant, kind of Kennedy-esque candidate and Kennedy-esque president, always traveling, on the go, throwing himself headlong into crowds of people, wanting to be the everyman. But this is dangerous, and the Secret Service finds it uncomfortable when the man is not in arm's reach.
So you write a lot about them. You write about every presidency, but of course the 2 terms of the Clinton presidency. It also struck me, I'm thinking, did the Secret Service know about what was going on with Monica Lewinsky and behind closed doors? And of course you write about that extensively. The answer is yes. If you're Secret Service, number one, what do you do about it, if anything? Do you have to shut up? And number two, what happens if some committee says, we want you to testify?
Well, a grand jury wanted the Secret Service agents to testify in the independent counsel investigation by Kenneth Starr, looking into, first, a bunch of real estate deals by President Clinton and his wife and other related speculators, and then later, eventually, into his relationship with a White House intern. Basically, the Secret Service agents could testify that the president hadn't been honest when he said he had never been alone with Monica Lewinsky. How big a deal that is, I'll leave to other people, politicians and advocates on both sides. But for the Secret Service, it was a big deal to have to testify because they want the president close. They want to stay close to the shoulder, again, for that same purpose, cover and evacuate. The moment there's the crack of gunfire, the sign of, an attack, a truck bomb, anthrax, the moment there is a sign of threat, they want to be able to lift that guy literally by the belt loops and get out of there. And they've done it before. But if the president is trying to keep them away from him, that's a problem. And they didn't want to testify. Ultimately, they had to. And their testimony contributed to ultimately the conclusion that the president had lied.
If there's an overarching theme of the book, in my view, it was that presidents aren't as protected as we think that they are. And you have story after story. It's just terrifying. At times somebody got onto an elevator with President Obama, had a gun on him. The thing is, we don't even hear about these stories. Maybe eventually they come out. Your book brought them out. How worried are you about the protection of the presidents?
I'm worried because the agents and officers that I've spent, years interviewing are worried. I think of the book as ringing an alarm bell that they want rung. And that is that this maybe sounds a little eerie, but all of the warning signs, all of the red flags that were sort of flailing and whipping around before Kennedy was killed are in some ways being rung right now. Some of those alarms are showing themselves now. Agents running ragged, treading water, way too many assignments for too people, technology that is outdated. We need to bring the Secret Service into the 21st century. Other serial security gaffes before this moment tell us all what we need to see right in front of our eyes, which is the Secret Service has a lot of chinks in the armor. And it's only really a matter of time, according to these agents and officers, before something disastrous happens. And they're basically saying, let's do something before that unfolds.
And Carol, I have to ask you, I know some in the Secret Service, you write about this, say that you were just wrote this book to embarrass them. They would go after you because of this. But meanwhile, I think the number was about 180 agents who talked to you throughout the course of this book. So let's put it on the record. What's the motivation in writing this book and basically exposing all that is right and wrong with the Secret Service?
So I was completely blown away by some of the agents and officers I met, the kind of sacrifice that they make in their personal lives, in their physical health, in their mental health. I mean, the vigilance that you have to have day in, day out, to work a rope line, to walk the gate. I would crumple, and I know most regular people would crumple too. So they're giving a lot at the office. So when they say we don't have the tools that we need to do our zero fail mission, to deliver on the promise and duty, I believe them. I believe that the book is, while embarrassing in some places, is a wake-up call, is a call to action. You know, presidents have been, and you know, if President Biden were with me now, I'd say this: presidents over history have been reluctant to really give the agency, you know, a big boost of money because they fear that it looks like they're funding their own protection. But these agents and officers are saying, help us. We're public servants. We promised to do something. Help us do the job. And that's all they really want.
Carol, it's 500 pages, but I read it in 2 nights because it was a book I just could not put down. Zero Fail, The Rise and Fall of the Secret Service. Thank you for spending time with me. Congratulations on the book. It is an absolute must-read for anybody who follows politics, loves politics, or wants to understand the security of the president and other key officials. Thank you, Carol.
Thank you.
Zero Fail, it's that good. We're going to take one more break, and then we'll be back.